Hey, folks, just me again. Um, this is my second post, part two, I guess, of the Jimmy Dorsey band posts, gig stories or that happened at that time, around that time. I'm trying to keep these somewhat in chronological order. The way I posted them on Facebook was almost like the Star Wars movies. You know how it kind of jumps all around and stuff. It's kind of like what that's like, but just in a chronological sense, this is what I'm trying to do with this. So it says here that on a previous post to this, I made a Tonight Show reference. So this is the Tonight Show reference or story that I ended up posting. So I'll address what the reference was when we get to that later. But this is what I said. This is what actually happened in LA while we were on the Dorsey tour doing our first half a dozen or 8 shows or something in the LA area. It's a bit lengthy, but grab a coffee, and I should have done that too. But anyway, grab a coffee, and if you want to hear it, here it is. My second big band tour of 4 in the 90s was a 3-month tour with the Jimmy Dorsey Orchestra, which again, you know already. That was supposed to have been led by trumpeter and former Dorsey band member Lee Castle, which I mentioned in my last video. The band assembled to rehearse in Los Angeles on January 2nd, 1991, and Lee passed away on November 16th, 1990. In that month and a half between his death and when the band assembled, the new chosen band leader, which you already know, turned out to be saxophonist, clarinetist Henry Cuesta. Henry was clarinet and saxophone lead and soloist with Lawrence Welk for 11 years, and whether you believe it or not, Henry was a perfect example of the fact that those guys were accomplished players with musicality and chops, and he proved that each night that an impromptu jam session broke out after sound check at various concert halls along the tour, which I know I've made reference to before. We spent the first week or 10 days in the Los Angeles area, and while there, one of our trumpeters, John Bambridge Jr., from here on in referred to as John B. Jr., suggested we go to see a taping of The Tonight Show. A few of us chimed in and made the case that we may not even be able to get tickets for that day, and if we couldn't, we would be hooped and not be able to see it at all because of our tour schedule. Unbeknownst to me and many of the others considering going to the taping, John B. Jr.'s father, John Bambridge Sr., was one of the music arrangers for Doc Severson's Tonight Show band, and also did play the alto sax 2 chair, second alto chair, a bunch with them. So we quickly found out that we wouldn't need tickets. How convenient. Needless to say, we quickly piled into a van and headed for Burbank. Upon arriving, we headed for the stage door and entered the building. We quickly found out that the band had just finished sound check and had headed across the street. Across the street from NBC's Burbank studios was a restaurant lounge called Chadney's, where the band would go each day between sound check and taping. So we headed across the street to Chadney's, and when we arrived, the drinks were already flowing with much banter and laughter happening. The band guys quickly recognized John B. Jr. and invited us into the hang like we were one of them. It was quite surreal to be hanging out and having a drink with Tommy Newsom, Pete Chrislieb, Conti Condoli, Ed Shaughnessy, Joel DiBartolo, Chuck Finley, etc. If you have any albums of singers or groups from the 80s and 90s that were recorded in Los Angeles and have trumpets on them that would have been hired for the session, and there were many, you will likely see Chuck Finley and Gary Grant's names. They were kind of hired as a package deal, and a lot of artists that wanted backing horns, especially trumpets. Chuck Finley and Gary Grant worked together a crap ton. And then I put in brackets, and I will also add Jerry Hay to that list, H-E-Y. And Jerry Hay's name will come up a lot too when it comes to horn section stuff, trumpet horn section stuff. But yeah, Chuck Finley and Gary Grant, they would. I can't imagine the sessions and how lucrative it was for them back in that time because they were just hired constantly together. Pardon me. They were some of the top call studio guys of that time in Los Angeles, and yes, they were. After a great hang with the band at Chadney's, we wandered back over to NBC and went into the studio and positioned ourselves at the bottom of the seats and off to the side, which put us close to the band and about 30 or 40 feet or so away from the stage. We didn't know anything about what was happening on the show, but soon after, Jay Leno came out and mentioned that the guests for that show were Steve Lawrence, as in Steve and Edie, Neil Patrick Harris, who was doing Doogie Howser at the time, and Lily Tomlin. Doc Severinsen came out and had the band pull out some new arrangements to play right out of the gate and to also entertain the audience, and they sounded fantastic, and yes, they certainly did. The unfortunate thing is that the TV audience doesn't get to hear the band like the studio audience does, especially on the breaks. Anytime that there was a place where there was supposed to be a commercial break, the band would fire up. And you probably watched The Tonight Show, even with Doc Severinsen and even after, where a commercial would happen and then they'd come back and the band would have to stop. Like you'd hear maybe 1 or 2 seconds or 3 or 4 seconds of the band, and then they would stop. A lot of times the band just got cooking and all of a sudden basically the hook came out and yank, they were done. Yeah, it was a quick cutoff. That must have been frustrating, I would imagine, especially if you're up playing a solo or something. That would, yeah, anyway, whatever. After the show was done and the audience had left, we went to the stage and met with John B. Sr., John Bamford Sr., and thanked him for helping to get us into the studio. I got a photo with Doc Severinsen, Conti Condoli, trumpet, Ernie Tack, bass trombone, and Steve Lawrence when he came back out to the stage. I do have these photos kicking around here somewhere, and when I find them, and the search continues, I will post them somewhere on here. I will post another photo or two that I have in the comment section below. All in all, it was a pretty cool way to burn up a day off, and I have a photo of Doc and I backstage at the Eric Harvey Theater at the Banff Center in 2008, I believe it is. The Primetime Big Band, which is a big band that I play in here in Calgary, were chosen to go out to the Banff Center and be the backing big band for a bunch of the trumpet players at the ITG conference, which is International Trumpet Guild conference. And Doc was one of the guests, among many others. And we backed Doc up on a bunch of tunes and a concert at the Eric Harvey Theater. So that's how I got that photo with him, which was very cool. So anyway, and I posted a video of the Tonight Show band and Doc Severinsen doing Begin the Beguine, which you can find again on YouTube, with Pete Chrisley doing the tenor solo. And if you remember the nice, tasty tenor solo on Natalie Cole's Unforgettable, her album from the early 90s, I think it was, when she was singing that track with her dad on video, that tenor solo is Pete Chrisley as well. And like I said here, he's got a sound as big as a house. And he does. First time I heard him live was at that Bud Shank workshop I mentioned in a previous video. He was one of the clinicians there, one of the instructors. And also we brought him up to play with the Primetime Band, I think in about 2015, 14, something like that. And he played most of the tenor solos, and me being tenor one, the ones that I had in my part, I just got a chance to sit right beside him and listen to him. And it was a real treat. So yeah, he's quite something. Great player. Anyway, so that's my Tonight Show band story of when one of our trumpet players was, his dad was involved with the Tonight Show band, was able to get us into a taping at NBC. That was pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, that's all the news, weather, and sports for this one. So like I said, I've got my email address up and running, YouTube at belltones.ca. YOUTUBE at Belltones, BELLTONES.ca, not .com, .ca. Yeah, and if you want to send along any comments or, anything, ask a question, say hi, whatever. No spam. Don't do it. Resist the urge. I don't want your $10,000 a month system or Viagra or insurance or anything like I said before. Don't want any of it. Don't want any of it, so don't do it. But anyway, if you want to say hi, that's cool. Or if you have a question or comment, please leave them there. Okay, I'm going to exit stage left. Take care. Enjoy your isolation. Hope all is going well where that's concerned. And bye for now.